poisonous intro.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. Today, Paul and I are here to talk to you all about the ways that we interact with the games that we love.
Well, gee golly, we sure are. I don't know how I used to talk to people on this podcast. I've lost
Kinda
my
like
identity in all these different intros that we've done, but I'm here. I've got a Pringles can for some reason, and we're gonna talk about interfaces.
Instead of outer faces.
Yes, exactly. And at some point, I'll remember how to podcast as we go.
Right. No, it's okay. Why don't you use the Pringles can now just to get it out of your system?
Sorry. I scared the cat.
You might have scared a listener's cat too if they're not using earbuds. Is there anybody out there in the world that is listening to this podcast without wearing like headphones? Like, is there somebody walking around their house with like their Google Home system blurting us out all over all the rooms? Or like, is it self-contained? Because I'm kind of curious.
If you are playing it out loud, are you nervous that we're going to yell an obscenity? Just like, sorry, I'm going to bleep that so it'll be Sorry.
The word is always funny, but yes, that's a good point. But yeah, we're here to talk about UI. So what I did to prepare for this episode, and Paul's just like, oh God, not so soon. But what I did to prepare for this episode is I grabbed a bunch of big boxes down and I started looking in the most logical place to think about the UI and interactivity. And that was in the game menu booklet, where it tells you how to interact with everything. And I'm realizing that there is a lot of ways, Paul, to interact with the classic games we love and the modern games that are based in a retro style. I mean, there is certainly no one consistent standard, even within, like, say, just Sierra, really. Or, like, LucasArts is probably the most consistent, but it's still sort of changed over time a little bit.
Well, Anna, I'm glad that you used my name back there, because it's apparently my favorite word, like the rest of society, and it really helped maintain my attention throughout your little...
I use whatever I got, man.
So what I did to prepare for the episode was just like deer in headlights, completely forget every question I had for myself. Like, what did they use in Blackwell? Don't know. What kind of interface did they use in Kathy Rain? Don't know. And slowly, one by one, sorted out all the answers. Did Space Quest 5 have a taste icon like 4 did? Don't know. But it turns out it did. It did not. That's me. That's the homework me speaking. And so now we're ready. So we have a big old list. It's got too much stuff on it. I might not even look at it because it's too much. I can't manage this conversation and also read this amount of notes at the same time. But let's start somewhere, Anna.
Well, let's talk about the earliest way to interact with any game out there, which is by
Yelling
text parser.
Right.
Would you freaking work? But no, text, like, and I mean, I'm not necessarily saying text versus text with images. I'm just saying any game where you need to use your keyboard to interact with it. So you're taking words. The developer has kind of been like, these are the words I think they're going to use to do this thing. You have to figure out what words they think you're going to be using to do the thing. And that's the interaction with the game. And I don't even know, like, are you into text parser? Did you even play text games without graphics? Like, what's your view on text parser stuff? Pros, cons?
Well, they're the greatest. I love text parsers. So I asked AI. I said I fed it all the different types of interfaces that I could think of that we'll cover here in this episode probably, and then I asked it to tell me what it felt. Logically speaking, because otherwise it'll be all, I'm a robot, I don't feel feelings. And I'm just like, please love me back. But anyway, I asked it what it found to be the most logical, and conversely, what it found to be the most illogical, just based on pure logic, looking at all these different things. And I'll reveal what it said for the most logical when we get to that. But for text parser, it said that this one is probably the most illogical. And to which I would say, go fuck yourself, AI. What do you know? No, I would say fair enough. I mean, it's fair enough. On paper, it is the most illogical to have, this blank canvas that is the entire vocabulary or lexicon of the human language. the assumedly English language, just based on most of the adventure games here. And anyway, yeah, it's so as illogical as it could be, I think. Well, so here's a quick pro and con for text parser interface. The pro is that it's the engagement is unlike any other, because there's a required amount of creativity from the player, and I find that engaging. I like trying to imagine what the developers already thought, right? Like what they would accept, and I like trying to figure out what the answer will be, and I also like trying to catch the game out or seeing what random thing that they might have thought of. There's a lot of text parser is the most charming of them all, I would say, but it's also the least logical. So some really quickly, I just want to give a quick classic example, a modern example, because I'm going to try and do this as like a template, like just to give everybody a quick jumping off point mentally of where we're at. So some classic examples would be like Zork, anything Infocom, Hitchhiker's Guide, etc., and then anything Sierra AGI or SCI 0, right? That's all text parser. We don't need to tell our audience, like they already. I'm yelling at myself. They already know that. Modern example would be Betrayed Alliance from Slats. Or Snail Trek from Icefall, and then upcoming is Cascadia Quest from Icefall and Crimson Diamond from Julia. So there is some modern examples. There's about to be more of them, which is nice, like Betrayed Alliance 2. So they're still being made because they're still charming, and I think that they're among my favorites.
Same here. Going back retroactively, I like it when the dev takes the extra opportunity to give you shortcuts. Like, for example, in Police Quest, OD, open door, right? Like the little quick commands that you can use so that you don't have to actually type everything out. And it's like, and I like the options in a text game. Do I want to save? I can hit F5, or I can go up into the escape menu, or I can type the word save, for example. They'd put all of those in there. So my earliest games were graphical text. I've never been very good at just text parser alone. And I think that's why it's moved to being more interactive novels or choice-based games now when they're just text, even the ones you can download, because coming up with the input and putting it into the computer, it is time consuming and it is not as quick and not as easy as a point and click.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking as you were describing that. There's a unique position that text parsers find themselves in where they can slip in the odd occasional joke, if you will, or gimmick or gag. Yeah, not gimmick, but gag, without having to fully commit to it. So a quick example, I've never articulated this to myself until now, but it would be, if you look at the end of Police Quest 1, since that's fresh on our minds, that you can take all your clothes off in front of everybody in the city when you're accepting the key. Right, and that's a lovely little gag, and it's funny, and it's the perfect example of the charm of parsers, where you can find these little moments, where in your potentially perverted mind thought of something like that, and you could wonder if the developers had too, and just that moment that clicks when they thought of it, when they thought of the same thing you did and acted upon it, and give you a quick little reward for it. It's a lovely dopamine hit. But what's nice about the parser is that you can just one off that. It's like, hey, what about like right here and now only if they took their clothes off? That would be funny, right? Yeah, sure, put it in the game. Whereas if you want gags like that in a point and click sort of interface, you have to commit to it for the entire game. And that would be it's so mad that it's insane that there's even one example of that, but there is. Well, there's a few of them. There's a few
for like a gag or two. Seriously, in some cases too, you're like, and the having to write a lot of extra text when you're creating the game, because you're like, now it's not just touch, look, interact, walk, taste, lick, zipper. Like, we'll go over them. It's hilarious to me that you have to, because you can't just click the zipper on everything, and it's just like, that doesn't work. You have to write shit in there, man. That's huge.
Yeah, exactly. And that you touched exactly on my example, which would be like the lick one or even smell from Space Quest 4, where it's like, if you really want that joke, you have to commit to it for the whole game. Because like you said, they're not going to give you generic text. And, with game development as been discovered on my end, it would be, sorry, everybody, you could hear my brain just shut down partially for a second there. I'm back. Hi. Would be, there's nothing harder than writing maintaining momentum when you have to write rejections. Like that's just like, it's to keep rejections fun to read is the greatest of all challenges, I think, when it comes to at least comedic writing. So just, it's insane that Space Quest and Larry and those guys even tried something like that. But anyway, point being is that I think the charm of part of the charm of Text Parser is that you can just slip little things in when you think of it. And it suits the game really well. I don't know, it's a whole different kind of experience, a parser compared to a click thing. But I don't know, maybe at the end we can like compare, give them like a quick ranking or something like that. But anyway, what else do we want to say about parsers? Anything?
I've said it on other episodes, but I will reiterate. I was very disappointed when the game style changed from parser to point and click. I was very upset as a younger person that they would be dumbing down the games that I was just starting to get the hang of and just getting good at. Now I'm softer. I enjoy a point and click. I also enjoy a parser, and I appreciate both of them, but it is a lot easier. It really limits what you can do, where, and how you can do it. It has to fit with the commands. It has to be something you're able to do. You can't just type, like you said, take off clothes unless there's an ability to do that throughout the whole game. You can't randomly, like you can type a swear word and maybe it'll activate a cheat in some games or a mode or something in some way could react. But 9 times out of 10 in a point and click game, your swear words land on deaf ears and you're just left yelling it at your computer screen.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And like in Space Quest 3, for example, if you have to swear like 13 times or something like that to get the game to curse back at you. So you think you're being ignored and you're not. Maybe a nice like way to look at it on the outside is almost in like a Taoist sense or like a Jungian sense. It's like parser is utter chaos and point and click. Parser would be at the risk of being overly chaotic and point and click is at the risk of being overly orderly.
Mm-hmm. That might be what it is, actually. Maybe that's why I didn't like point and click, because I'm chaos. How long have y'all been listening to this podcast? I am chaos.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, the risk of us doing this podcast alone has always been the fact that we're both actually kind of chaos. You know, like when Rick was here, he was kind of the order, let's say, because we both tend to be a little bit more like water in that sense, but. There is something to be said, and I guess, well, no, actually, because I want to go from here to 9 verbs. So I'll just say that there is something nice about point and click as far as like putting you in like a fenced, like a walled garden, I guess you could say, where it's like within these bounds, you can still hunt for and find little berries and little fruits and little pieces of gold. Kind of like what we touched on with the remake, the positive remake aspects of Police Quest 1, where it's like, since I don't have to type look at, or this, since I don't have to type not only look at, even if there's a shortcut, and take a wild guess at what they're calling the thing in the room, right? It's like, are they calling that an armoire or a cabinet or like stuff like that?
Not everybody keeps a parser log like Allo did, as he mentioned on our episode, and we mentioned before. He took all the parser input logs from every beta tester and then went over it and said, oh, people called it a door, people called it this, people called it that, people called it this. And then he put all of those and all the random shit they tried and gave it a response in the freaking game. In Larry 2. And I'm just like, dude, that is how you do it, man. Because now we're not playing a guessing game so much.
Right. Right. And actually, since we're on parser, and speaking of that is how to do it, I just want to put it into spotlight for a second. Phil's work at Icefall Games with specifically Snail Trek, because he's working on Cascadia Quest. He's done Void Quest, which I hadn't played Void Quest, but I have played all the Snail Treks with my son, which was such a good time. All that to say that he is bringing parser into the modern age by implementing features like suggestions and autofill, like much like you might get from using a smartphone, and having suggestions like when you it's almost similar to anybody like console players, anybody, because that's our market. Any market's not even the right word, but that's our bloody audience. There we go. But I'm sure we're all video game nerds to a degree, so it's like you play PlayStation and it's like they know for your keyboard to start suggesting words as soon as possible because it sucks to try and type with a controller. And Phil's kind of doing the same thing in his games where it's like as soon as you start typing a word, suggestions pop up for you to select. And that does kind of circumvent a lot of the guesswork where it's like, okay, well, they're definitely going to call it this. And it's also nice getting rid of like little typos on our end, on the player's end, where you can just immediately select the word that you were thinking of. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there is like I think there's room for a resurgence in Text Parser. There's definitely the nostalgia for it and everything like that. But I think there are like little modern technologies that could enhance it, and that's not saying that they need to either. Because I would still enjoy just a pure parser that's like a fresh game that I hadn't played before. All right, let's move on to the bloody 9-verb, because the 9-verb or just the verb interface, the scum style interface. That's the reason I wanted to move from parser to here is because when Ron Gilbert played King's Quest and just hated Text Parser, that inspired him to go home and come up with the verb interface. And I really like this one too. So it's we'll do. If we even bother with rankings, we could do that all later. We're not a big ranking show anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But before we nerd off too hard, what are your immediate thoughts on the verb interface, scum style?
So yeah, when I first started playing Maniac Mansion, I felt really, really overwhelmed, as I mentioned, and I was just looking it up, and I mean, there's 15 verbs on the bottom of the page. Now that's I was overwhelmed. You've got use, push, pull, give, use, push, pull, give, open, close, read, talk to, pick up, what is, new kid, unlock, use, turn on, turn off, and fix. And by the time they got to the first Monkey Island game, it had been a little bit refined. And you've got your open, close, push, pull, walk to, pick up, talk to, give, use, look at, turn on, and turn off, which, thank goodness, by the time you got to Monkey Island 2, and I'm going to guess probably in the remake of Monkey Island 1, but I haven't looked it up, they switch it to the give, open, close, pick up, look at, talk to, use, push, and pull, and they merged turn off and turn off. Those went into use. Walk disappeared because you're just clicking on the screen. And what else? Dig didn't even have any actions. Items were assessed by moving your mouse near the bottom of the screen, and that was it. Full Throttle and Curse of Monkey Island did the 3-item Verb Coin, and that's kind of how you interacted. And Sam and Max had the cursor change depending on current action in a menu, right?
Yes.
On the box.
So to the verb thing, okay, a couple of points I want to pick up on is one, the Maniac Mansion one, I had no idea that there was 16 options. The fact that there's a walk to, at Monkey Island 1 too, that's quite absurd. Like it's so superfluous, it makes you wonder why it got past that point in development. I'm sure there might be a better reason for Maniac Mansion, like predating mice. Let's say mouses. No, I think it's mice, whatever. But also the wording of what is instead of look that's also kind of insane. Like, really, guys? Like, you settled on that? You had a team of developers and you're like, let's go with what is. That's just so clunky and weird. And then, we get to Monkey Island 1 where it's down to 12. And that all seems pretty good. Again, like the walk to doesn't need to be there, and turn off and on seems a bit much but anyway, I guess all this to say is that by Monkey Island 2 we've got the refined official 9-verb thing, which is what Thimbleweed Park used and Fate of Atlantis used, and it became it kind of hit its peak and then they bailed on it more or less because from Monkey Island 2 we get what, Fate of Atlantis, and that's about it. I mean, Loom's a whole different one where you have a similar system, but it's different. Back McCracken, I'm just going to guess because it just doesn't matter. I'm going to just guess that it's got 12 like Monkey Island 1. Maybe it has more like Maniac. Again, I don't care. But yes, I guess let's look at this from the scope of at its best, at its peak, which would have been 9 verbs. And for your most recent experience with this would have been Thimbleweed Park. So maybe that's a good place for both of us to judge it from. But anyway, I guess. What would your pros and cons be? Like, what actually, you know what are your pros? I think we've heard your cons. So what do you like about it?
Well, it's straightforward. You can see what you're going to do with it. For example, on Thimbleweed Park, it's just sitting right there. It's at the bottom of the screen, kind of like the classic games. Your inventory is sitting right there at the bottom. You see what you have. You see what you need to do. Click on the thing. Do you want to do it or not? I've always found it tedious a little bit to go through each one. Do I open it? Do I close it? Do I give it? Do I pick it up? Do I push it? Do I pull it? Do I use it? Like, 'cause to me, the way I play these games, especially once I get stuck, is I want to click each thing on each thing to find the thing I'm missing. So it's, a little bit more tedious than the walk, look, touch, taste traditionally that I would find with Sierra games. I feel there's a little bit more work to have to do it the LucasArts way.
So for you, you don't like the travel time, like the time it takes to go and pick up the verb you need and to use it. You'd rather hover above it and right-click cycle through things.
Yes, I'm a right-click cycle througher more than a menu getter. Absolutely,
that's exactly what I was getting at. Okay, and especially for the listeners too, because that I know that about you from all the videos and playtests from Phantom Fellows. But it's like, because anybody listening might want to like interject and be like, well, hold on, with the top-down menu in Sierra, you have to go up and get the thing and go back down. But the difference there is that with the LucasArts, there is no right-click cycling through. There's no way to really cheat that. You have to go down, pick up the verb you want, and bring it back up to the thing. And so that's the bone you're picking with this. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, which I didn't actually clearly have defined until you just put it all together for me. Yes, Paul, that is exactly why I'm not as big of a fan, even though it's very straightforward and simple. And, there technically is nothing wrong with it. Right. I hate extra steps. Of course, you might have noticed that about me when I'm playing the game. I don't like to have to take extra steps if I don't have to.
I think the listeners take notice. That's how you properly mansplain to somebody.
Why, thank you. I've been practicing.
Oh my God. All right. So I'll come a little bit to its defense and say,
Fight.
You made a lot of really good points, because I'm wondering how much of it I like from nostalgia. It's not necessarily nostalgia, because I love Thimbleweed Park, as everyone knows, and that uses the same interface. In fact, I'll say that the Dolores mini game that came out afterwards, which was Ron just churning out like another engine, that was more of like a 2-click sort of deal, and I didn't like it. It's just, but we'll get to that later, and as to why I don't like that kind of stuff. But like I don't mind the up and down, but I think you're onto something where there's less exploration because there's something in the way of you exploring. It's honestly, I guess if I was to really analyze it, I'd say that the verb system is quite similar to Parser in that I'm going to be more prone to trying to immediately find what I need to get through, as opposed to just playing. And that's maybe the beauty of the point and click systems, whether it's what the one that Sam and Max used or the Sierra style one, where it's like it's very inviting to being playful and exploration in general. Whereas the verb thing, it's like, I might not want to I might not want to click all of these things on everything. I'm probably more likely to just to try and find the solution, the one that's gonna work. But at the same time, like that, with adventure games, it's like you're pretty much looking, interacting, or talking. So it's like it's almost like that the other ones are superfluous or not superfluous. They're circumstance based or something like that.
Like, are you next to a bookshelf? Because then you probably want push rather than talk to.
Right. Or I'm thinking too. I have like this vague memory of Monkey Island 1 where I remember there was one of the commands I think you only used it once in the entire game. which I'm not a precise man, so that could be me saying under 5 times. Let's just say, just in case it like upsets somebody. But like,
all our LucasArts
maybe it was turn on or turn off. But like, I just remember when I finally clicked it while doing a playthrough of it. It's like 7 years ago, so I don't remember. But I just remember being like, oh wow, I haven't used this all game. And then I don't remember using it again after that. And then it made me think of the real estate that had to take up just to be there one single time. So it's definitely not probably the most streamlined way. All right, I'm going to wrap it up by just saying I think that I defend it a lot in part because of the Dolores minigame, where if it's this versus a very simplified 2-click system, I'd rather this because it does offer an element of exploration and playfulness that you don't get with the really goal-oriented setup that is the 2-click. Phew, that was actually kind of painful to get through.
Good. So to talk, which leads us into the 2-click interface. So I'd like you to hit just a couple of examples. What did we do? We hit that. Least favorite. Okay. We can do that at the end of the episode. Let's go to 2-click. Let's talk about that a little bit, because clearly this is a place where we have some opinions.
Right, and this is the direction that adventure games have mostly gone, is into the 2-click territory. I think Beneath the Steel Sky is maybe, I don't know if it's like the pioneer from it, but I'll say, like, for example, in Adventure Game Studio, there's templates. One would be Sierra style, one would be 9-verb style, and the other would be Bass style, Beneath the Steel Sky style, which is in this context the 2-click option. So in other words, many of the amazing point and click games from AGS that listeners that you guys have played were done in a Bass template, let's just say, to kind of simplify things. So Beneath the Steel Sky, Broken Sword, Gemini Rue, Blackwell Legacy, just a mix of classic and modern ones that use it. Just again, for everybody listening to get into the mindset of exactly what we're talking about here. And it's just a very simplified, left click interaction, right click observation.
Yeah, essentially. Usually right click observation, or left. What is it? Yeah, left to do something with it. No, left to look and right to do something with it, I think.
Right.
Because usually you look
or left,
first.
Left. Sorry.
Yeah. Look left, right, left, right. What right? Left. Okay.
It's got very sticky all of a sudden.
Everything around me is always sticky.
It's all sticky. So what I'll start off by saying is, like, it's the pros and this is such a revered and appreciated and highly regarded interface that even AI was dickish about it. Where I'm like, hey, give me some pros and cons for all of these interfaces, and it was like for the 2-click, it said that the pro would be simplifies gameplay, highly accessible. Cons might reduce depth in interactions. Like even AI didn't want to fully say it's like it might. I don't think it does, but it might. Like, no, fuck you. It totally does. It completely reduces the depth of interactions, and I would even say that it robs you of a great deal of exploration in a genre called adventure.
Right, which is funny because, enhanced exploration, if that's the angle that it's trying to go with, you can get, like, enriching the game's narrative setting and the second click allowing for deeper interaction. But to me, that's like an overlay you've put over it to kind of share an idea with people that aren't used to playing adventure games. They're saying, like, maybe reducing complexity. I've heard it said that it means, it's because you don't have to navigate through multiple menus or icons to perform a single action. The game is now more accessible, especially for beginners. So our point of view on this is very dependent on the amount of experience we have with this style of game. But if I was to say share a game like this with a friend of mine that had never played an adventure game, I'd probably go for 2-click for the sake of giving them the ability to play it at all.
Right. Yeah. Well, it is. There's so much about what you just said to really. I'm trying to decide where to jump into. Like, one, it's like they're trying to enhance immersion by simplifying the gameplay, and that's right. Just your laughter alone is my point. Where it's like, dude, you're going to lose immersion the more simple you make it. And my other argument, and I'm trying not to get into old rants that our listeners have been put through enough times by now. Really, is a lot of my hesitation right now, because I don't want to do that to them again. Because they all know basically more or less. They even know this ominous feeling of where Paul's about to go with this, and we all know it. I'm trying not to, and I'm going to lose that war. But it's like, okay, like you had said, even the AI says here accessibility, and you worded it as it's accessible to beginners or getting people into it. And it's just like, dude, this isn't Red Dead Redemption. Like, this is an adventure game. You look at shit and you touch it and maybe you talk to it. The end. Like, that's it, dude. There's no like L2 for aim and R1 for trigger, like reloading. I to this day, I don't understand. Like, I fired up, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I actually want to leave it nameless because I'm not shitting on it, because it's probably what I'll end up doing, which is offering, well, actually, it's literally what I was working on last month, which was a tutorial for an adventure game, because everybody else is. So I kind of have to. But the point is like, this is an adventure game. They're just like, hey, if you need some on-screen help with this, like, everything with adventure games has gotten so, God, I sound so old, and like, back in my day, I like iron was heavier than aluminum. But it's just like, dude, like I think there's like this big fear that people aren't going to be able to get into adventure games because of the controls, and that baffles me. I don't understand that, because at its most complex, there's 3 or 4 things that you're doing. So I don't get that, and I don't appreciate this simplified gameplay when it's already a simplified genre.
You know what they're doing, though? They're making the gameplay simplified and then putting in difficult puzzles. So, okay, you lose your interactivity in the game itself, but all of the interactivity is essentially directed towards puzzles, which is A, a time extender, and B, I think a lot of people say that. Like, people are playing adventure games for some story and for some puzzles. And I mean, even looking at the way that you're designing your game, I mean, we're not exactly going to puzzles in that same way that a lot of adventure games are typically doing that. In fact, you're using interactivity, narration, and the story to engage the player, right? So 2-click is like 2-clicking until you get to a puzzle, and then 2-clicking some more, and then you get to a puzzle over and over and over again until the end of the game.
Right. Thank you. Okay. I really appreciate that, because it's great points, and it's also some like a fresh angle I can give listeners, which I really wanted, because I didn't want to go through that whole thing again. So yeah, that's a great point, because I don't think adventure gamers like puzzles as much as they're told they do.
Right? Like, and mazes. I mean, how many adventure gamers have you met and they're like, fuck yeah, mazes are the best. I wish games had more mazes.
Right, exactly. And it's like, there is something that's a bit, there's something almost self-beneficial to being like, yes, I like puzzles. I'm a person of brains. I'm an intellectual. I enjoy solving the odd puzzle because I can, and I have the mental fortitude to get through it. But the reality is like, I think it for a lot of us with adventure games, and for I'm not going to say the Sierra thing, because it's not Sierra players. It's all adventure gamers. Like, growing up, one of the best parts of adventure games was exploring the environment and being rewarded for doing so. So you bring up a lovely and much just, you articulated it so much better than I'm attempting to right now. But your point being, that I stand by, is that it's not so much puzzles and story. I think it's story and exploration. And with the simplified 2-click interface, you lose a ton of exploration. And now I'm not advocating to, like, the developers should kill themselves by using like a sniff icon like Space Quest 4. but that is at least back in the direction of like, or even the 9 Verb or previous one, where there's several different things you could try for everything, and you can just explore. See what the developer thought of, see what the character that you're invested in has to say about doing certain things. Whereas we're heading into that spoon-fed territory of like, don't worry, we'll tell you when it's important. Like, look, if we wrote lines for it, then you'll be able to click on it. If not, don't worry about it. And a lot of the modern interfaces, like with the 2-click and the BAS interfaces, you click on something that's clickable, first of all, which is annoying to me. I'd like everything to be a hotspot, but okay, if that's too much, I can understand that to a degree. You click on it, and then it's like, okay, now that you've clicked on it, you can either look at it or you can interact with it, left or right click. If it's something that you can take, then there'll be a third option for you to click that you can take it. And it's like, it's just, I get that it saves a lot of development time, especially for indie developers. I get that, but I don't think that's really part of the conversations when it comes to making the best game that we can all make. And so when it comes down to that, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The puzzles aren't as fun as the adventure gamers are told that they are. Like, a lot of us nowadays, it's like, I feel like it's this dirty secret in a sense, and I'm like on the verge of exposing it, and everyone's like, shh, don't say it, dude. But I feel like tons of adventure gamers use walkthroughs. And they just want to experience the fucking story. They don't want to spend 6 days on a puzzle anymore, because we all have a Steam library with 1,000 games in it. We all have access to the walkthrough. That's half the problem. Is like this like, like the apple that Eve ate is sitting right there. We can all just bite into it and get past this horrible puzzle, or not horrible, but difficult puzzle. And yeah, I think you articulated it perfectly, where it's like, instead of puzzle and story, maybe it should be exploration and story. And the puzzles need to be engaging. I'm not saying skip puzzles. That is a huge part of adventure games. And I do appreciate puzzles. And that, yes, they do have to be in that pocket of not insanely easy, but not insanely hard, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the main point is that the emphasis at some point shifted away from exploration and into simplicity. And again, if you were to try and sell that to me based on like with a platform of like, hey, we're going to try and simplify how you interact with a massive on-world multiplayer Red Dead sort of game, it's like, okay, actually, yeah, that game's really confusing. Maybe you could dumb it down for me. But we're talking about adventure games, yo. You touch shit, you look at shit, and you talk to shit. And that's it. We don't need it to be that much more simple. And yeah, there is bad game design, but that doesn't, I don't feel like we should redesign how the player interacts because a few devs made, can't say that word,
specific choices.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Super PC. I appreciate that. So yeah, okay, all right. I think we're surviving this rant. It sounded kind of, it's kind of a fresh take on it. The other thing, the other aspect too of this is that it really benefits it benefits two things that I should contend with. To be fair, one of them is mobile gaming. If you're going to port it to mobile, it's a huge benefit to be able to have it for mobile. Fair enough. I mean, again, we've had this talk with a couple of our guests recently too, where it's like, I don't know a lot of people that play adventure games on a phone anyway. I really don't. Like maybe on a Square, maybe on a tablet.
It's more fun to set up an adventure game to run on a tablet, Paul, I think, for a lot of us than it is to actually play it. Like, look, my tablet can play these games. This is awesome. Look, this one and this one and this one. And then you look at it and you play it for a few minutes. You're like, okay, I feel satisfied. I have accomplished something. Put away the tablet, play a game on a computer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think I said that in unison with at least a couple dozen listeners. So there's that. And then the other angle is streamers and playthroughs and YouTubers and stuff like that, where it's like they want this kind of thing. They want quick exit hotspots, any things to make and the danger there is that they're a loud voice in the community for how things should be, because they're the YouTubers that we all listen to. They're the loudest ones on the highest pedestal. And so I think it's wise to just be a little bit careful as far as motivations are concerned. And it's not to say that, like, there's these like evil YouTubers out there with malevolent intentions or anything like that. So
no, they're not out there being like, okay, it's not that they're evil, but they really are. They're catering to a demographic. It's like, I want this to be fast. I want this to be engaging. I want this to have progression, and I want it to be interesting. I can't think about it because I'm also interacting with my audience. I can't problem solve the same way. So I just need to be able to guide myself through this enough that I'm exciting enough to eventually monetize so that I can make money. And okay, take this in a sideways view. Imagine you start a business and it's a rather profitable business, and you have two choices. You can expand it by making it bigger and hiring more people and making the business bigger, or you can take it to an investor and say, hey, could you invest in my business? But certain businesses aren't like that. Like, yes, this is a profitable business for you, but it won't make money for an investor and you won't be able to pay them back. So you can't take the game in that direction. Like, so a YouTuber can't take an adventure game to an investor because it's just, he's going to be like, this is bullshit. You're going to get stuck. You're going to be stuck figuring out a puzzle for 4 hours while people are watching you. Nobody's going to watch this. This isn't something I can invest in. But then you're going to come in with some fast, quick hotspots are there, 2-click interface. Everything's, you can progress right through it. The puzzles, the people in the audience can help you. It moves fast. And the investor's like, this is where you can take it to the next level.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it that strikes so many notes with streamers as well, where it's like, it's nice and simple. They can just the idea that they can multitask between not playing the game and playing the game should be a huge red flag. Where it's like, hey, they
don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to feel dumb when you're watching them. And a game, you know how dumb you feel playing a game you can't figure out, even alone when nobody's watching you.
Right, exactly. I mean, the feeling dumb is what gives you that payoff, that dopamine hit of like, I finally got it. Like it's, but yeah, like you said, when they simplify the everything down to where they can multitask, it's basically it's steering adventure games in the direction of what streamers and YouTubers want is a bad move, because their intentions are different. They need to get through things quicker. Like the last thing people want to see on a stream, or that they at least want to stream, is somebody just like having a saunter through a game. Like, I'm just going to walk around this room, click on all the things, laugh, quietly to myself. Like, none of that really helps them, but I think it's more what players want. Like, okay, what you want when you're watching a stream might not be what you want when you're playing a game. I don't know.
Yes, Paul, well said, actually. Really well said.
So when you're playing the game, you want to be able to explore. You want to be able to get just frustrated enough to where you get the dopamine hit, because nothing is free. You're not going to get these giant payoffs unless you put in some work. Like, that's just a universe life thing. It's not an adventure game thing. That's an everything thing, where it's like there is a cost for everything. And if you don't pay for something, you're not going to get the dopamine hit. And if you're finding more and more like adventure games lackluster, or you're getting less and less payoffs, it's because there's less and less to do. It's like you walk back to the streaming thing. It's like a streamer walks on a screen. They want to know, what can I click on? All right, I'm in a new room. What can I click on? What's a hotspot? That's a hotspot. Great. Which one of these things on the shelf is the thing that I need? Because we got to keep moving. I've got to stream. Hey, thanks for the sub, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now next. And it's just like this different world of playing. It's a presentation. It's not an immersive experience. And I just, that's I guess my biggest issue with that kind of stuff is seeing the adventure games kind of lose a lot of the magic of what they were and what they could still be for at the sake of ease and simplicity. And then it makes me feel like everyone's lying to themselves, because this isn't a difficult genre to play. There's not a lot of controls. There's just, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say it for like a fifth time. You look, you interact, you talk. That's about it. Sometimes you use a thing on a thing, bonus. But it's like, that's it, dude. That is it. Like, can we stop pretending like this is like some complex interface of just an endless amount of possibilities as you wind down a narrative road? It's like, it's just, you just walk around a room and human. You poke shit, you look at shit, you talk to a person. That's it. Like, we don't need to pretend like it's complicated. So that's why we simplified it. And anyway, I'm getting ranty and off and away from the point, but yeah.
It's all right. I'm going to sidestep from the point. I got to get this out. As we were talking about interface, I clued in that there's another way to interact with games in this specific way. When you're looking at a room as a character, the game can either say, like, look light, right? The game can say, the light has an orange-yellow glow. The light is very satisfied, whatever it is, right? Or the game can be like, have the character interact with the light. Wow, that light really has an orange glow.
Right. So narration versus
versus whose point of view. Are you looking at a room as in like overhead, this is a table? Or are you looking at the room like, oh, a table. Nah, I don't feel like doing anything at the table right now. So is the room talking to you, or is the character talking to you about the room? And I think that's another part of how far into a game I can get absorbed. Because if it's like generic room, then I'm talking to the room and the room is showing me what's in the room. But I want to hear about the room from the character's point of view. What do you think of this room, buddy?
Right. Right. That is interesting. That's something that I know divides people quite a bit, where they can be quite passionately against narration, I guess it would be from my recollection. Yeah, that is quite interesting, because it does change. It changes the kind of the entire dynamic of the game in a sense, because the narrator. Well, I'm thinking specifically of like Space Quest, where it gives you a whole. Gary Owens became a character in that game in a sense, right? The narrator becomes a character in the game.
That's another way too, right? Because now it's not the room talking and it's not your main character talking. It's a third person talking like God up in the sky somewhere that can kind of see all, hear all, see all, and be all, which is it's like a third voice. That's really cool. I didn't even think of that.
Right. Yeah. And see, and I don't know if it's just because of how much I like Gary Owens that I really liked it. Maybe it's another thing.
I like narrators, man. I love narrators.
I wonder if it lends itself better to comedy than other genres. I'm failing to think. Well, okay, Gabriel Knight.
Documentaries about nature.
Yeah, anything with that, bro. But Gabriel Knight had a narrator, and yes, she was like painfully slow, and that's I think a lot of people's issue with that narration was more the pacing of it than the fact that there was a narrator. That's
Quest
interesting.
It was kind of like that. The King's Quest narrator voice was like a storyteller. It was somebody that opened a book and was reading you a story. Alexander wasn't sure if he was able to pick that up.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's something
like not in the same way as Gary Owens. It was different, a little different.
Right. It was more I don't know, it was more comforting, I think. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
when it was done from like the fairy tale perspective, there was something.
Mm-hmm. The person reading the book has now stopped to describe something to you. They're going to go back to reading the book now.
Right.
So you
It was
know
almost like,
something.
wow, I'm glad somebody knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the middle of King's Quest, where it's like, okay, well, this guy knows what's going on. That's comforting.
And speaking of King's Quest, I mean, let's talk about that. We haven't even touched upon our alma mater, our Sierra style point and click interface.
Right. Right. So Sierra style point and click interface, that would be where you could right click cycle for anybody. I mean, everybody again listening knows exactly what we're talking about. It's any Sierra VGA game. There's not a lot of modern examples of it, believe it or not. Probably on the believe side for people listening, but Gray Matter, and Cognition. So the Pinkerton Road stuff, like Jane Jensen stuff, was doing it. But yeah, it's not survived. It's not survived the course of time so well. Then again, I guess in hindsight, nothing has except for the 2-click. I mean, everything basically is 2-click nowadays. So besides some more like one-off or unique interfaces that we'll get to. But yeah, this basically went the way of 9-verb. I guess it's fair enough to say. Because there are, I think other modern examples would be Infamous quests, right? Like Heroine's Quest and things like that. I'm yeah. So okay. Anyways, yeah. So this one, why don't you start on it? How do you feel about it? I mean, rhetorically, but
Well, I mentioned when it first existed, I hated it. When Leisure Suit Larry 5 came out, it was holding my hand, and I was so mad at it. I'm like, damn you! I've been playing you and various versions of you for years, and now here you are holding my hand, walking me through this Sierra-style point-and-click interface, and I was almost resented of it, like at the time. But like, right. Okay, now I'm fond of it and I love it. And like you said, I right-click through it, so it's not very often I'm gonna take my thing, go up to the menu and click on it, but I will do it to access the main menu instead of escape sometimes. My point is, okay, going back, and we've mentioned this before too, when I would right click in a Sierra game, it would always be a different amount of clicks because either you would be or you wouldn't be holding an inventory item. So do you do that, right? You skip by what you want to click on and you're like, oh shit, there it was. It's after walk. And then you go back and it's like, it's not like the order has changed, but the amount of clicks has changed. So I've been overshooting on that forever. And I've been using this interaction method for a long time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's always fun to watch anybody like doing playthroughs on YouTube or anything, like doing the cycle with the mouse, because you see them go past the thing and then line themselves up for it the next time. It's interesting because I don't care for that. I mean, maybe it's not interesting. It's like the way I went about doing Phantom Fellows was very custom to exactly how I wanted it, and that's probably not a weird thing to hear. It's like, if you're going to do your own game, then you should probably make it how what you think the ideal is, or what your own ideal is, or whatever. And mine really is a hybrid. Like ultimately, Phantom Fellows has a Sierra style system, but I'm so heavy on the keyboard that I prefer it that way. I guess I was looking for like a blend between AGI and point and click, because I really like arrow control. I like walking the characters with the arrow. And then it's like, if you're already on the keyboard, then just like LIT for look, interact, touch, LIT 1, 2, 3, do the same things. And it's like, it's all just there. It's like you only have to press 1, 2, or 3, and then subconsciously controlling with the arrow. So it's like, I guess what I'm saying is, even though I went with the Sierra style, there are still things about it that annoy me that I also kind of circumvented with the keyboard. But I guess, I don't know. I guess a lot of the reason that we've ended up in the situation we have as far as having the 2-click take precedence is because it's hard to come up with a totally clean system for this for point and click. And we've been through this like off air, like quite a lot with Phantom Fellows stuff. We're just trying to find like the most ideal situation. Like one of the things that Anna inspired in development was what she just brought up with the right clicking. Where it's like, if you have an inventory, let's say it's 5 clicks to cycle through, and if you don't, then it's 4 clicks. And you kind of subconsciously start feeling where interact is from any given point. So it's like, I know that I click 4 times from here to get there. But if you have an inventory or you don't, the amount of clicks is now different. And that may or may not be, I think it is, but that may or may not be a reason that people overshoot and undershoot what they're trying to go for. So for development of Phantom Fellows, a swing that I took at trying to fix this problem was, if you don't have an inventory item, then you have your satchel, your fanny pack, your backpack, your thing that holds your inventory is a cursor icon. So that way, every right click is the same amount no matter what. It's always 5 clicks all the way through, whether you have an active inventory or not. And then you might say, well, okay, what do you do with a backpack for a cursor? Or in the specific case, it's a fanny pack. It doesn't matter. So it's like, well, what do you do with that as a cursor? And so my solution to that was that you can, once that's your selected cursor, you click it anywhere on the screen to quickly open up your inventory. Because I feel like it makes logical sense. Like if your cursor,
then you don't need to go to the bottom to grab it, and it saves that trip that I was complaining about in the 9 verb.
Right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Just bringing back like a 2-year-old conversation we had that inspired this to begin with.
It did.
But yeah, so I think there's, I guess what we're getting at is that there's ways to improve the Sierra system. Like I almost feel like people gave up on it too soon and quickly just, again, everybody's really leaned into this 2-click thing. And I guess my example isn't something that I was asked by Jack from Adventure Game Hotspot when we were guests on their show. When he was just asking reasons as to why I wasn't going with 2-click. And I remember saying, well, with modern adventure games, they tell you what you can do where. So it's like, I was playing Techno Babylon and I was kind of testing it. I'm like, well, what is, again, what are modern games doing when it comes to clicking on a person? And so with a 2-click, a very simple interface where you're not selecting icons, you're not telling the game what you want to do. You're letting the game tell you what you want to do. You click on a person and they just start to talk. Fair enough. Okay, that's the most common thing you do by clicking on an NPC in your game. But what if, first of all, it's an adventure game and you want to explore and just, for the charming sake of exploration, hear these lines that the developers may or may not have written, etc. But also, furthermore, I'd invite you to just imagine, like, okay, what if you're writing a comedy, something that's supposed to be funny? Imagine like how much potential for laughs I would lose if, when the player was the ghost in my game, and they clicked on a person, an NPC, that it automatically triggered, talking. Like there's a lot of potential in a ghost touching a person, that doesn't know that they're in the room, and there's a lot of potential in the ghost talking to somebody that they might not be able to hear. And there's just the overall interest or potential in a look at. Like, well, if I look at him, he'll so in Phantom Fellows, again, like the main character is Oliver and the ghost is Engelbert. They're both quite different, and Engelbert is a bit stiffer and a bit not drier, but just he's a bit more skeptical, a bit more just on the negative spectrum of things, because he's fucking dead and that's a bummer.
He's a realist too, just a little bit more, a little bit less like up in the air, which is funny because he's a ghost. Right.
But so it's like. The opportunity there is to learn twice as much about an NPC, about a character that's a big part of the game. Let's say you can learn twice as much about him, or learn the same thing about him, but from 2 totally different perspectives. And again, that's all to me. It's just world building and enriching and interesting to be able to a lot of times in the game, just being more blunt about it is. Oliver will just kind of dick off and go for the laugh, and he'll say something just funny and irreverent or childlike or whatever that's hopefully funny, and that's that. And then it's like, okay, but what does the thing really do though? And then Engelbert's your guy to actually tell you what the fuck is going on with it. And that's all that stuff to me is just world building and enhancing and things that the Sierra style interface gives you, is the ability to get the absolute most out of exploring a game that you possibly can.
I think Al Emo in The Lost Dutchman's Mine really touched on that again, too. It made it sort of the classic Sierra-style menu, and you can click on everything and interact on everything, and it made sure that it had jokes all the way through for everything you did, and it didn't miss any opportunities. And the style of, games and the like that it was sort of based upon. It's, it's not super modern, I think 15 years ago now. So it's just before all the modern classics kind of started rolling out. It was the first time, because it was right after the Quest for Glory remakes had been done by the company. So it was like, to me, this was just like, oh my gosh, adventure games are coming back. This is a real thing.
Right. Oh, okay. So was that HED? Now Himalaya?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
They were kind of they were, when you first got the internet and you loaded it up, these were the people on your computer saying, hey, no, you're not alone. And other people do still like them.
Right. Right. And you bring up an interesting point too, where it's like, I think a lot of the Sierra style interface depends on the game having lots of hotspots. Ideally everything is clickable, and that's, perhaps that's a discussion just for another day. We would need like a guest on to bring some sort of balance to it, to say like, hey, here's why that's an unrealistic ask for a lot of indie devs, or whatever the case, whatever the argument against that is.
This is a lot of writing, actually, because you're doing two characters interacting with everything in the whole game, which means for every item you have to do look, interact. Right. That's a lot.
It is. It's absolutely a lot. But I don't know if I have the grounds to stand on to say this, but I would maybe make the argument that if I only had one player character, it's not that it wouldn't be a lot, but that it would be manageable. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is unmanageable, because it just barely is. But it's a lot. Like, I wouldn't impose what I'm doing on anybody else, where it's like, dude,
but the way they bounce back and forth from each other, the two characters, your ability, because, okay, imagine in the game that you as the ghost, you look at something, you'll say something about it, your partner says something about it, you say something about it, a little joke happens, and it's like a tiny little Abbott and Costello comedy sketch that just happened. So not only have you learned a little bit about the item, you've been made to laugh, and oh my God, it's so worth it. And then in some cases, you have the other person's response playing off of it. So now you've got this like deep layered thing for looking at a freaking counter, dude. Like,
right. No, thank you. That's very nice of you to say, first of all. And then to your point too, it's like, yeah, you can do all kinds of little callbacks, and really create. Hopefully creating like almost like that on a much lesser scale, obviously, than The Simpsons, but that same sort of vibe where by the end of it, it's like you've got like this tiny little world, and there's been enough setups and payoffs to where you have like these callbacks that you're like, I remember that from day two. Like that's ultimately that's kind of the goal. And yeah, I mean, okay, so it's harder to do this many. It's harder, I guess, to have everything interactable when you have two players, but to take away credit for myself, it's easier in the sense that I have this 2.5D world where it's like, and I just learned the other day that that's the best way to explain that to people. But it's like you only walk on the x-axis. There's only left and right. There's no up and down. So I think when you present a world like that in this 2.5D thing, there's kind of almost no excuse not to have everything be a hotspot, because it's all just very right there. There's no pixel hunting. There's no anything. It's like there's a shelf with 6 things on it. Like, how am I going to straight face not let you click on all the things there? But I don't know. I guess that's what games do now. They circumvent that by giving you the hotspot highlight, where it's just like you kind of, your eyes. It kind of lures you away from all the things you can't click on, and it says, hey, look over here, this is the thing you can click on. Look, it's highlighted and it's lit up and there's bright neon color. Click here, and you kind of forget, like, what about all this other shit you can't click on? What the hell?
Yeah, like one thing in a room. Sometimes it's like you've got this intricate room, it looks really cool, and where can you go? Door. I can go to the door. That's the only thing I can interact with in this whole. Why did you even bother making the screen? It should have been a blank fucking screen with a door. That's it, because that's all I can do anything with.
Well, one of our big takeaways from this episode so far is you really hit the nail on the head because we've been talking for the last couple of weeks about puzzles and just being skeptical about people's interest in let's specify hard puzzles. And it's like, I don't know, man. I don't think adventure gamers want really difficult puzzles these days. I mean, they don't want difficult anything, first of all. So don't basically don't come at me for saying that, because it's like it's the whole genre has leaned away from the least amount of challenge. Like, everything is just like not only is it a 2-click system, but like they'll offer like a on-screen tutorial to teach you how to click the 2 buttons that you can click. I don't understand. Anyway, sorry. Point being is that one of the biggest takeaways from this episode would be that maybe there is a little bit of a misconception going on where it's like, we don't want hard puzzles, but we want immersive storytelling, and I think for immersive storytelling, you need immersive environments. And so maybe if we gave the player a little bit more freedom to explore, you could take up slack in the puzzle area. You don't have to stress yourself out with like, just insane just puzzle dependency charts that take up like, a poster sized board. Like maybe we don't need that anymore. Maybe that fit better before the internet, and when you had a whole game, when you had a game that you had to get through a whole summer with, it's like, okay, that worked perfectly then, but like, I don't think people want that anymore. And I think, I don't think anybody would really even argue that so much. So it's like, okay, well, if everyone's going to walk through like the puzzles, then I don't know. We're very close to adventure games just playing themselves.
And it's just, because I was just saying Sanitarium, right? What do most people say about that game? That game was amazing up until you got to say like the Aztec area or like the alien computer stuff. And then the puzzles got so ridiculously complicated. You couldn't even use a walkthrough. You're literally having to follow a video frame by frame to finish the puzzle. That's what I hear people say. Right. I don't hear people saying, oh my gosh, the last level in Sanitarium was so hard, the Aztec stuff, because it took me months to figure out the puzzle. They're not saying that.
I came home from work every day, put in my 2 hours, and when it finally hit, I was, exactly. That's a time that's past us now. So, all right. I'm sorry. I steered us back into shitting on 2-clicks, and it's not even fair in the sense that there's a lot of awesome 2-click games. Like
there is. Our
listeners know how much we enjoyed, let's say, Techno Babylon or Kathy Rayner. A lot of the games that use more simplistic interfaces. It can be done well. I guess if anything, if I was better at manipulating an audience, I would have framed this as, not being more hard on 2-click, but being less hard on Sierra style or 9 verbs, and not being so, I don't know, quick to dismiss things that aren't, just get me through this fucking game. I hate it and I don't want to be playing it.
Well, what about, Verb Coin, because that's not quite like any of the others. It's actually, in some ways, it's kind of close to how Gemini Rue was, but with a coin interface. You click on your item, your little menu's going to pop up, and then you can choose what you're going to do in the game through that little menu.
Yeah, Verb Coin is, I don't know, it gives me almost a little bit of anxiety. It reminds me of how, it's weird because adventure gamers kind of, for the most part, seem to not like Verb Coin, and I agree with them on that. I don't really like the Verb Coin interface, but it's oddly has a home in a lot of like PlayStation console games, like
or games that are ported to PlayStation consoles but are also PC.
Right.
Like the Deponia series, I think Broken Age uses them. Wet Dreams Don't Dry, if I recall, used it. There's a few.
Yeah, it's strange how because first of all, I have very few examples outside of the adventure genre besides Red Dead 2, but then also Anna's been playing it a little bit on the side. So as a common example, like the way you select a weapon or select a thing, select inventory, right? Is you bring up the coin, the wheel, and you move the thing to the thing, and then you let it go on the thing. And like I don't like that. It feels very out of control. Like
me too. It's very hard.
Like at no point do I feel any sort of precision. I just feel very like, okay, I kind of move it here and kind of like 4 o'clock, and then let go, and hopefully it selects. And Verb Coin in adventure games has a similar feel to it, where it just has like this little bit of imprecision and clunkiness that's weird. And I don't hate it, but I'm not crazy about it.
It's like an extra layer of like a wall in front of playing your game somehow. It's like, I can do this, but first you must get through this trial.
Right, exactly. And I would almost say it's, again, we highlighted earlier like the swing that I'm taking at circumventing the cycle issue of cycling past the thing. But I think Verb Coin was perhaps an attempted solution to that, to the exact same problem. People were, again, like early 90s development wise, everyone's looking at each other to see what's going on. You see Sierra doing this thing, and so I don't know, maybe you work at Revolution or whatever, and or Lucas, and you give one of their games a try, and it's like, man, this cycle thing's a little annoying because I keep overshooting it. And then we have, just to this day, I've concluded that there is no perfect solution. But I think the Verb Coin is a result of trying to find that perfect solution of where the player gets more than two options, but it's in like a neat, tidy little package, and it's all right there. You hinted at Gemini Rue. To anybody that hasn't played that, it's not. It's almost like if you smash Verb Coin and Sierra together, because you basically get a tiny Sierra top-down menu where a Verb Coin would be. And it shows you your inventory. It's very tiny because it has to be, because it's popping up right in the middle of the play screen. But a tiny little square pops up with your inventory and the 3 or 4 basic commands. And I think it's just another attempt to be like, hey, we want them to have more than this 2-click option. But we don't want them to be cycling through and missing the thing and circling back again over and over and over and over again. And we don't want them to have to go down to pick up a verb or up to grab something from a menu. We want it all to happen right here. So again, I don't think this is a perfect solution, but this is another swing at it.
I think like in intention, it's meant to be time saving, because it's like, you don't need to go figuring stuff out all over the place to take it where you want to take it. You just want to click on the thing and we'll show you all the options you can do with the thing. So like in theory, that's a great idea.
Right, because it does circumvent the traveling, like you didn't like with the 9 verb, like having to go down and pick up, the verb that you want and then go up the screen and use it. And that might sound ridiculous, but it's something you're doing thousands of times in a playthrough. So it is a big deal after a while. It is a thing after a while.
But it's tiny, this one. It's a bit tiny. Some of them are a bit tiny when they do that. The same with the Verb Coin. Any one of them or the ideas like it. And it's so little that I feel I have to be so exact to click on this tiny little thing it pulls me out that little bit. When I've got a nice big chunky menu or I can right click cycle, I know what I'm freaking doing. I can see it and I can click it. Right.
And this is where, for me, this, like what I think I know exactly what I like the best, and that's keyboard. I guess what I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to get across here, and that's, I'm surprised I don't see more keyboard integration in adventure game, because
here is my chance right here, Paul. Here is my chance right here, Paul. There is the perfect example of keyboard integration in an adventure game right here in front of me. And that game is Manhunter, because Manhunter 1 and Manhunter 2 have no mouse support. So you don't have to think about this. It's just, this is what it is. Play the game.
Right. Damn, you're exactly right. Too bad it's not a beloved game though. It doesn't help my cause too much, because everyone's like, ugh, Manhunter, gross. Only Anna likes this game.
It's beautiful. I'm looking. You know what? The instruction booklet I have has manual pages, neon yellow pages in the instruction manual. Dude, how can I not love it?
It is such a cool looking game too. And that ties back into the AGI thing, or SCI 0 era, where it's like we all, for the most part, we started off playing adventure games with keyboard, at least keyboard direction, right? With the walking, and parser too. You talk. So it's like, and the other thing that went through my head development wise was like, well, it's not like with a mouse, because the thing with the keyboard, I was like, well, it's going to require that the player is like hovering over the keyboard the whole time. But it's like, it's not like with the mouse you get to sit back. Like either way, you're leaning forward, engaged in the game, either with your hand on a mouse or on a keyboard. I don't really see like it mattering that much. I don't know.
Well, I don't use the keyboard when I'm playing your game or any other game that anybody's made, especially with keyboard use, ever since King's Quest IV came out, because that was my first, there's a mouse cursor, what do I do with it and how I use it? And it was actually rather kind of ineffective as far as having a mouse cursor in a game goes. But that is still where, as you know, I tend to go to.
Yeah, and it's very helpful for development because you're the one testing it if for the point and click players, and I'm the one testing it for the please play it the way I want you to play it players.
Which is not me.
Right, so I need you to be finding because I don't, for example, I don't use the top down menu ever at all. I use 1, 2, 3. Which is LIT 1, 2, 3, look, interact, touch. That's all I ever use. And then obviously tab for inventory and escape for menu. So I don't even use the top down menu, which means Anna's always finding bugs and issues because I'm constantly neglecting it and forgetting it exists. So it's super crucial. But I will say that when you send me videos of you finding bugs and being nothing but a tremendous friend and help for this game that I'm going to now use against you, I'm so sorry, is I watch you playing these videos and I see you missing the thing and cycling through sometimes, even with our little, fanny pack little, intervention or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, it kills me. Just it doesn't bother you at all. I mean, you're happy as hell to play it. So I don't want to even bother pointing it out. But when I see it, I'm just like, oh my God, it's every time. And it's not just you, it's you, every YouTuber, anybody you watch doing a Sierra style game, they're like, they want interact, there goes interact. And now they got it this time. It's just like over and over and over again. And so I get, again, back to Gemini Rue or back to the Verb Coin. It's like, I see why they tried to circumvent that. They're like, this cycle thing, it doesn't bother Anna, but it bothers a lot of people.
It's amazing. A lot of things don't bother me. You're like, oh, he's fine. Paul's finally convinced me to start skipping through stuff so that I can get through the thing to get to the part he's asking me to look at. Because he's like, you really don't need to read through and narrate, and laugh and appreciate every single line you've just read through 14 times. Just get to the place you need to be. And I'm like, this shit is funny.
I'm just like, is the couch fixed? Can you click on the couch yet?
I'm getting there, man. But that, that's just me having fun with everything I do. I can't help it. It's gonna happen. And you know what? You're gonna get a lot of really technical people, which is coming up soon on your alpha beta runs, and they're gonna nitpick it in ways that perhaps I wasn't, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. And I will say too, and just in quick defense of the game, in case anybody's building up preconceived notions based on the keyboard thing or poking holes in it mentally, as I would be doing if I was listening. And I would just say that if you keep in mind that it's this 2.5D world where you can only walk left or right, then using arrows is perfect. Because the downside to arrows for me would be in, just imagine any other adventure game besides mine and Dark Side, where you can walk up and down as well. And it's like, okay, then arrows become a pain in the ass, because now you're doing that little thing you do when you walk down a staircase, that little up left, up left to diagonally get across the screen. I get that. Anybody who's played Sierra games AGI with arrows knows exactly what I'm kind of loosely describing right now. And that would be a problem, but it's like in my game you can only walk left or right. So there is no pain, there is no painful navigation. You just left or right. Yeah. And then since your hand's already left or righting, 1, 2, 3 for look, interact, touch. Which, yeah, I mean, it's like I'm asking of the player a very small learning curve to just associate LIT with 1, 2, 3 so that they quickly remember what 1, 2, and 3 does. Because I don't think anybody's going to actually click L, I, or T, even though you can. Point being is to me, the ideal interface, tying this into the episode, would be, well, that's not true, because it only, again, applies to my game or Dark Side where you're only walking left or right. But okay, if you have a game where you're only going left to right, I think the ideal is where you can click left to right and then 1, 2, 3 for your 3 different things, and you don't have to cycle through shit. You don't have to deal with a verb coin. You get more than a 2-click interface would give you. You don't have 9 verbs. You don't have to type the thing. You just 1, 2, 3.
How does it know what you're looking at when you hit L? Are you hovering the mouse with a certain cursor? Are you standing near it? What's the story with that? Because I've actually never tried it in your game.
Well, no. So in this case, it's like the 1, 2, 3 replaces the right click. So LIT 1, 2, 3 L look is 1. So you press 1 and that gives you the look cursor. And then with the mouse, you put it wherever you want and click it. So it's still point and click.
Oh,
you're just using 1, 2, and 3 or LIT to select which way you want to interact, and then you use the mouse.
Wow, it's funny, it's been like that for ages, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? How does this work?
And I always almost steer you away from it, because I'm like, you find all those sweet point and click bugs that I need to be fixing. So,
don't worry, dear, it's fine. It's a thing people can do. It's okay. So what I want to talk about now, because we've talked about how we engage with the games and what it is we do to interact with it, but I want to touch a little bit on unique user-face mechanics, things that are specific to a game that maybe isn't being used in other games. Like you could even just go right back to the Notebook, how it was used in Laura Bow, how it was used in Gabriel Knight, and how it's kind of a unique mechanic. Even the Crimson Diamond has a notebook function that helps you progress to check off what you've been doing as you've been going through it. And there's so many ways to use those kind of UIs. So let's talk about that.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'm going to start with my favorite, and it's a classic, and it's almost Trojan horsed into this because I'm not sure if it would even come as a surprise to be mentioned, but I would say it's multiple player characters, and it's not something that's done as often as you would think, because we can all immediately recall whether it's Day of the Tentacle or Maniac Mansion or not really Sam and Max, but why not? It fizzles out quickly. It's like, oh, multiplication, that's been done a lot. Like it's kind of not been done that much. One of my favorite modern examples of it, besides Thimbleweed Park, is Resonance, which does as well. And they have their own unique interface that I'll hopefully segue neatly into in a second. But I just wanted to say that my absolute favorite is the multiple player characters. Which again is kind of like a duh thing when it comes to the development of my game having multiple player characters, because I think I like it the most from a storytelling point of view, having two characters to work off of, but a very close second would be for the mechanics of it, for being able to utilize somebody's specialty in the moment that you should be. One person's good at a thing and the other one's not, so you switch so that the person can do the thing. Or to work in tandem, where you can have something, you can pull off something because you can position two different characters in two different ways to make the thing happen. So that's probably easily my favorite, would be the multiple player character. What about you? What's your favorite one?
One of the games I really liked the user interface on was Techno Babylon, because it was kind of fun. You could take, like, for example, the robot maid and make her evil or make her good, and you have all these different settings. And then you talk to her and be like, oh, is this the setting you need to progress the storyline? And being able to mess with those kind of functions, that was fun, and it stuck with me. So I really liked that.
Yeah, me too. It was as I said in the episode that we did about it, it was like the peak usage of a game and world's environment as a mechanic, where they took everything about like cyberpunk future and employed it in a game mechanic and GUI that just fit like a glove. It was super natural. It felt like something, for lack of eloquence, that a future cop would do in that sort of setting. And it was just fun. It rewarded exploration, where you could try different personalities on different circuits and, get a different AI made, I guess you would say, before getting the right one, or you could get the right one and load a game back. And as I did, like, I remember getting it correct and then loading a save game just to get it wrong, just to see what kind of personalities you could have. So it rewarded exploration. It felt cyberpunk. It felt investigatory. It was, that was possibly my favorite mechanic in like a modern adventure game. That was just orchestrated perfectly. Well said. Another one to build off of that, to keep momentum going, would be the memory bank in Resonance. It was basically, you could store and manage not just memories. That almost sells it short. But you had a long-term memory bank and a short-term memory bank. And what it did really well was, there's certain times it gave you, I know. I'm sorry, everyone. It gave you agency over your specific gameplay, because it made you feel like you didn't need the developers to have accounted for stuff to step in and be like, hey, what's all this about? Like, the game would just let you take most things and drag it into the memory, and then drag it out of the memory and drop it onto somebody, let's say, or something. Right. I fear that I'm going to reduce it down to sounding like combining inventory, but it's not really like that. It's more like seeing something in your gameplay and grabbing it to talk about later. It gives you a way to be like, here's how you talk about this thing that you saw back there. You put it in your memory and then use that on, a guy you'll see later, or whatever the case is.
Which is better implemented than they tried to do in Les Manley's In Search for the King, because you had to grab somebody's dream that they were talking about out of the thought bubble and take it and put it in your inventory as a puzzle.
That's interesting. I'd be curious if ever one day we talk to Vince 12, who developed Resonance. I would love to know if he played Les Manley, because it does seem like a much more complex, much more polished, and much more widely applicable, but yet based on premise of what you're talking about. That was a weird sentence, but the words are all there.
Okay. Because in modern games, they do this cool stuff. Like, I haven't played it, but I've heard a lot about Disco Elysium, and it's got like this, I don't know, cabinet of the mind, or like a mind map. And it's like, it's a skill tree, but it it's your mental facilities. Like it's who you are, and it's your personality traits, like intellect, psyche, physique, and one other one. I can't remember what it is, but you're essentially using this as your place to do what you need to do and to see where you're at, which is, it's kind of neat way to put things together. Because there's a few games we've talked about where you're in 4 primary categories too, right? Like, was it Techno? No, it wasn't Techno Babylon. It was another one of those kinds of ones, right? Where you had to make decisions, and I can't even remember which one it is. But in the end, it was like a steampunk thing. It ends up determining what kind of a personality you are. It gives you a test almost. Anyways, stuff like that's kind of neat.
Right, I'm trying so bad to help you. My brain's just going, duh.
It's where there's like, you have to make this decision, and it's got a lot of greens and blues, and there's like a vat with a baby in it in your room, and you either have to keep it alive or let it die, and there's like a cave.
I didn't know you were going to go so abstract with it. There's a lot of greens and blues, man.
I can picture the game. I can even picture the beginning of it in my head, and it's a female.
All you got to do now is pictures the. Sorry.
Okay. And she's in an apartment, and it's like in the future. We've both played it.
Is that Techno Babylon? Because it starts out with the.
I guess I must. It's like that.
It was Techno Babylon all along. It was within inside of us this whole time.
So, anyway,
there's a lot of greens and blues. You might even say teals when you blend them together. And then she's, because the game's font. And then she's in a futuristic apartment in the beginning. Look, there's a lot of ins, a lot of outs. The point is, we really like Techno Babylon.
It's a great game, and yeah. So definitely, those are some good examples.
Well, you knocked that.
Do you have another one?
Early outside of the park. I don't know how to follow it. Okay, Whispers of a Machine from.
That's the game, maybe. I think that's the game I'm talking about.
Oh my god, that starts off in a futuristic apartment too. It very well could be.
Yes, that's exactly the one I think I mean. Yes.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, I'm so glad you said that. So let's segue into it. Whispers Machine. From Clifftop Games, Joel, who made Kathy Rain, also made Whispers of a Machine, and it's an awesome game. It's a really fun time, and they have a very cool mechanic in that, which is basically AR, like an augmented reality sort of situation.
Yes,
and it's very cool. It's like I remember when I played it, I was like, dude, I wouldn't have been surprised if I saw 20 more adventure games come out using that. Like, it seemed like something that could easily take off and just be like a widely accepted and implemented mechanic in an adventure game. Of course, there's a lot of issues with that as far as like it would have to take place in the future to validate the technology and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's like AR apps for like your phone and shit. You could put like a dinosaur on your table or whatever. Point being is, I don't know how much into the future you'd really have to go since we're kind of there. But anyway, it's really, really fun. And now it's making me think how Wide Jedi has a lot of really, really innovative things under one umbrella because, well, no, okay, sorry. We're mixing up our games here because I was just jumping back to Resonance for no other reason than I looked up on my screen and saw Resonance, which was Wide Jedi. Same as Techno Babylon having their mechanic, but this is Clifftop. This is Joel. This is Whispers of a Machine. My bad. Published by Raw Fury. Anyway, point being is that it was super unique, and yeah, I don't know how much I could bang on about it more without just starting to talk about Whispers of a Machine. So do you wanna say stuff about it? You played that game, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh right,
yes, I did,
sorry.
Funny enough. I don't have anything more to say about it. I already said it in my description. I just wanted to say on UI that my favorite unique add-on in a game is the zipper icon in Leisure Suit Larry, because it can be used to pee in a toilet or other locations. It can be used for Larry to show his junk to somebody, and it can even be used to light a match, which, as I was telling Paul before the episode, and now I feel all of you need to know this, I used to light a match. It has to be the hard one or the light. Anyways, point is, I would light it on my zipper, and I never realized how I knew how to do that. But now going back, obviously, Leisure Suit Larry told me to do that, and that's what I did.
I love how you're like, look, I could feel the foundation of this episode falling apart. So before it does, I just have to talk about this goddamn zipper.
Well, it's the thing I wrote right before the pictures.
Yeah, it's the one that and the lick smell thing from Space Quest.
Yeah,
it's like
which keeps me engaged. I love it.
Those are two examples of just we're so lucky that happened. That's insane that they went through the difficult. All right, we kind of touched on that. All right, anyway, all right. So you got your noses, you got your zippers, you got your augmented reality, you got multiplayer characters. We covered all that shit. We got notebooks from Laura Bow. Real-time decision making, that's one that Telltale does with Wolf Among Us and Walking Dead.
Timed. Don't they like say you have to make this decision like now?
Yeah,
right now.
They build stakes with that, right? Where it's like everything. Yeah, they create some sort of stakes by making it feel timed. I don't know. I was good on those games. This is too little interactivity for me. There wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. I really want to be able to get out and walk around the room. That's really crucial for me.
Me too. I'm like, come on, let me out of the constraints of this game, you dev. Can I go in the background? And then it just makes me want to break a game. I'm like, that's where I'm at now. I'm like, can I like clip through a wall or something? Is there something I can do somewhere? That's all.
Just to feel something, anything.
And to wrap up that point, I just want to say that's been the goal. And that's why, Paul, we've been talking about this so much and why we've talked about it enough to warrant it even having its own episode, because that's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to let your nostalgia for adventure game UI influence the game design so much so that you alienate the modern players. So it's like you're trying to find the best of all the worlds, right? And like you said, this is what the designers have been trying to do since the beginning of adventure games. And there's no single one where you and I are both like, well, maybe Space Quest 4, but mostly there's no single one where just like, that's it. That is it. That is what it's going to be. That is what it needs to be. And it's going to be forevermore. And other adventure games like it so much, they're going to use it. So it's like, it's finding that point in the middle that is not overly complicated and that it's not overly simplified, and where you have some agency over the game that you're playing.
All right, that's going to do it for this show today. This is just Paul. Our outro was a little sloppy. Played it too fast and loose, so I gotta just jumping in here real quick to do the usual thing. Sorry, let me raise the energy so you want to stick around to actually hear it. I don't know why I went with clown energy, but regardless. Okay, thank you guys so much for listening. I annoyed myself that episode, so if you're annoyed with me, I get it. You know, I trust me. I gotta live with me. All right, it's painful. But I hope you had fun listening. Wishlist our adventure game, The Phantom Fellows. It's on Steam. You can go to thephantomfellows.com, but also. Oh, here we go. We are at 97 wish lists on GOG. So there's a link in the description below. If you haven't yet, I would love so much and appreciate you so much if you could jump on GOG and vote for the Phantom Fellows. Again, the description's below. Click on the link, then click several more times until it's voted for. Hoping to get past 100 wish lists because we're almost done here. So the game. I mean, I'm almost done here with the thing I'm saying too. Don't worry. But also the game's almost done. So I really want to get us as many wish lists as I possibly can to try to get, GOG to sell the game. That would be awesome. But otherwise, check out our friends in the Adventure Game Hotspot Network. You got your Space Quest historian. You got your Adventure Game Geek. You got your conversations with Curtis. You got the Adventure Game Hotspot themselves. And you got One Short Eye, whose amazing video on Longbow, Conquest of the Longbow, as you may recall from our episode with him, is about to be out any second now. So keep a close eye on that. It is absolutely amazing. We were treated to an early screening of it because Anna and I did some voiceover work for it. I played the role of Will. That's right. I even had a rider where I insisted on clean Fiji water. No, I played Will, and Anna played Marion. So, like the main bloody squeeze. And it was a really good time. You could also find like Space Quest Historian and Game Geek and lots of people from the community putting in their voice work. And it's a good time. It's a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, you can say hi to us on Twitter. Anna is at the CGG podcast. Sometimes I am too. We're both at Phantom Fellows. We're a page in a group over on Facebook, Classic Gamers Guild. Join the group in the conversation. It's corny, but that's what it says here. Send us an email. We love emails. Mail at classicgamersguild.com. Become a Patreon, and a special thanks to our extra special thanks tier, which I've been meaning to rename for 2 years now, to something that's just easier to say. But a huge thank you. See, again, it's like a trip up on it. A huge extra special thanks to Brian Manow, to Michael Consul, and to a brand new extra special thanks tier. I really got to change that name to Tim Ellis. Tim, thank you so much for your generosity, especially this time of year. As your bloody champion. Speaking of this time of year, so hold on. Okay, let me focus. Thank you very much to Brian, Michael, and to Tim Ellis. We really appreciate you guys. And thank you to all of our Patreons, because we couldn't do this without you, or we could, but it would cost us money, and then we'd probably lose motivation. So in a weird roundabout way, we couldn't do this without you. We thank you guys very much. If you want to become a Patreon, we don't have very cash grabby tiers. We just have two. It's either $1 or $10. Any support is appreciated. And also I want to say happy belated Hanukkah to my fellow Hebes out there. L'chaim. And also, my kid just looked at me like I sneezed. That was funny. On the old Gesundheit joke. And also to Merry Christmas to everybody else. Personally, I was born on Christmas Eve. So basically it's like a happy birth mitzvah. For anybody out there who happens to celebrate Hanukkah, have a birthday around this time of year, and also is Jewish but finds our holidays to be depressing, so also does Christmas. Happy birth mitzvah to you guys, to everybody out there. Hope you have a happy holidays. I mean that. That sounded incredibly insincere because I'm in that robotic, let's just be done with this mode. But for real, happy holidays. And we love you guys. And thank you very much for listening to our show. I think that's all. Don't do a murder.
We have a lot of ducks. Do you have ducks around? Like ponds?
Yes. Yeah, there's a giant one across the street. Yeah, with some what do they call it? Mallards.
Mallards. Yeah, we got a giant one across the street too, behind the old apartment building, and another one up at the university, and another one up by the old path. So,
but enough about ducks.
I just don't give a duck.
This week on the CGG podcast.